Hello everyone, Kaleem Joy here, licensed midwife, certified pediatric massage therapist, coming to you from Sacramento, California. I'm really excited to be here tonight, and I hope that there will be lots of you joining me. This is a topic of conversation that I think brings about a lot of complications as well as interventions. I'm going to just turn off my air conditioner so you can hear me. Even though here in Sacramento it's quite warm, but that's okay. All right, so big babies. I'm looking forward to everybody joining me, and I'm going to put out a question to you. So what I want you to think about is, what is a big baby? What constitutes a big baby? What is that definition? What is the definition in midwifery care versus what is the definition in traditional care, meaning with obstetrics and in a hospital setting? What is the definition based in a hospital setting versus a home birth or perhaps a birth center birth? And we're going to talk about how is that handled, right? Okay, so one of our subscribers says 11 pounds 7 ounces. That's a big baby. You're right. That's a big baby. I will give that one credit. Absolutely, Catherine. And what, at home or wherever the baby is born, 11 pounds 7 ounces is considered a big baby. Well, in the traditional setting, there is a magic number, which is 8 pounds 13 ounces. And in some facilities, it can be even 8 pounds 9 ounces. So when we look at what is the definition of a big baby, when a baby is born, of course, not after they're born when they're 3, 4, 5 months old, but when a newborn comes into the world, what do we consider that? So generally the magic all-powerful numbers are 8 pounds 13 ounces. Now, what is it that causes a big baby to occur? Think about that for a minute. What do you think causes a big baby? Do you think that it is just ice cream or pizza? Well, there's a model that we have that says it's not what you do some of the time, it's what you do most of the time. So yes, we are going to talk about nutrition. Yes, we are going to talk about what is reality about big babies getting out and what the mind gets told, right? Because one of the things that we know is that your setting for your birth, Cassie says gestational diabetes or genetics. Thank you, brilliant. So yes, one of the reasons that babies get what we really think of as big babies would be somebody who is clinically gestationally diabetic. Now, gestational diabetes is something that gets tested to all women unless they refuse or decline in the traditional hospital medical obstetrical world. But in home birth, that is practice to practice and family to family preference and based on the genetics of that individual family, which is why midwifery care is focused on individual care, right? Versus the masses. Okay, so gestational diabetes, when a birth giver clinically truly is, not just that she's had a couple of lab tests that said, oh, her levels, and that all-powerful level used to be 140, it's now down to 135, and some have taken it down even more when they drink that lovely sugar syrupy syrup, which of course is the worst thing for anybody who has a sugar intolerance, and it certainly isn't good for a baby who is struggling to maintain a appropriate weight, right? But this is how the test is done in the traditional system. And they drink this down, they get a lab test 1 hour later. If it comes up past that, whatever their magical number is, which is about 135 to 140, they go back and they have a double load, a 100-gram load, and they get a test once an hour for 3 hours. And if they fail that test, they are considered gestational diabetic. So then what happens is they either get put on monitors at home to decide, can they monitor and can they adequately keep their blood sugars under control by diet, or do they need medication, either oral or insulin injection? And I think we did a live on gestational diabetes once. If I didn't, then we're going to do one again. But just to take in and look at that tonight is really where we can jump into that. And genetics, right? We have a generality that says if a family is, let's say, of Asian descent and their babies generally are in the smaller side, then those babies are going to, if they get large, if you will, those babies clinically might be looked at as they are gestational, from a gestational diabetic mother, and that they're large for dates. But genetics, if there's a genetics that has large babies, then it is not them. So that's where we go back to understanding that there are a lot of factors that go into what is clinically a large baby, a big baby. So the care provider, again, does matter. And you want a care provider that is going to take you into account what your genetics are, what your family history is. If you have a lot of diabetes in your family, then of course something needs to be looked at and watched and given you tools to be able to handle that, right? Now, some in, let's say, our area go to classes online to learn how to eat. I don't feel like that's enough. I feel like that one-on-one, that understanding, giving them resources that if these are the things that they're eating, let's look for substitutes that are going to help them to be able to do what? What do I always focus on? Taking ownership, right? Taking ownership and becoming empowered to make a difference in the pregnancy of how the outcome occurs. It is not up to your care provider to make sure that that outcome happens. It is up to your care provider to make sure that things are assessed, that if there is something that you're told, so that you can make the corrections. The corrections are not done by the care provider. It is your responsibility. And what I'm finding more and more, and I've known this since the beginning of my career, is that we have a population that somehow has in their minds that if I go to the doctor and whatever the doctor says, that's the gospel. That is absolute truth, and it is what's going to happen. Here's a case in point. How many women have you either talked to or known of or learned about on your social media or etc. who have been told you have a big baby? Your baby is at least 9 pounds, and you may not or probably cannot get your baby out vaginally, and I really think we should schedule a cesarean. Now, this is not a scare tactic for those of you who might choose to watch this who are not as familiar with midwifery. This is no scare tactic. What this is, it's reality. We heard of it this week. It's reality, okay? And that reality happens daily in our society. And this day-to-day philosophy of how this occurs continues this cycle of birth givers and women unable to decide if they really can trust their bodies, if they can trust birth, and if they can trust their baby. And because of things that are said to them, such as, I think your baby is too big to get out. Now, when this occurs in a prenatal time, especially when it could be early, 28, 32, 33 weeks, 34 weeks, and somebody is already being told by their care provider, your baby is too big. I don't think you can deliver this baby vaginally. I think we should do a cesarean. Now, this, in my opinion, unless there is clinically a insulin-dependent diabetic who possibly could grow a baby that is extra large, should never be given a C-section, in my opinion, as its only option. I think they should be given the opportunity to have a trial of labor, which the whole world trial of labor is like you're on trial. It's terrible. But I think they should be given an opportunity to birth their babies if possible. And we know that if a birth giver goes into labor spontaneously and the baby has a chance to do some laboring, they do significantly better, not only health-wise, but respiratory-wise, calorie-wise, neurological-wise, and the birth giver, the woman herself, does better healing up emotionally from a labor that resulted in a cesarean than from a scheduled cesarean. Especially if somebody decides they're going to have the baby 2 weeks early. Now, again, I'm saying that clinical birth givers who may truly have an issue because of insulin-dependent diabetes, there may be other factors involved. I'm talking about birth givers and women who are not diagnosed with gestational, although 70% of women are, which I say I don't really think that they are. And if they are, let's correct it. Let's correct what's going on, okay? So when we define it, it's 8 pounds, 13 ounces, and it comes from gestational diabetes if it's really clinically there, not just lab tests, but symptoms as well, and possibly genetics. But genetics does not determine that a baby can't get out. Oh, for heaven's sakes, no. All right. So what is, with a care provider, if you have a care provider who does not believe, or you hear of somebody, or you know of social groups or whatever, that care providers are telling birth givers and women, I don't believe that you can get this size of a baby out. One of the things we know is that that sets an emotional, mental image into a birth giver. That no matter how hard that birth giver, that woman, is going to work at not listening to that, there is like the little thing on her shoulder that's always going to be that little whisper in her ear. And you have to work really hard not to have to listen to that if you're going to labor. And labor demands that your emotions, which means your mind and your heart, have to be in congruency, in balance with your body. Because if you've watched any of my 40Ps, certainly the new series coming up, but understanding, and I've gone over oxytocin in this, is that oxytocin is the love hormone. It is when we are birthing, letting milk down, when we're making love, having orgasms. It has to be in a trusting, happy, positive light. And if something gets into the head that says, I need you, the door's going, it's not enough time, maybe you can't do this, the mind will shut that oxytocin down and it will not allow it to work to its maximum. And it can stimulate adrenaline, which then the two have to vie for who's going to be in charge. So it is so important to begin that mindset by surrounding yourself both with family, friends, social media, that including your care providers who are there to support you in having a normal, natural birth of whatever baby you're going to grow. Because no one can know what your body is capable of doing, of anyone's body is capable of doing, until you go through labor. No one. We had a woman many years ago, and this is not an isolated case, all right? We had a woman many years ago. She transferred into our care late on because she was told by her physician that, you know, she was going to have a big baby and they didn't really think she'd get it out. Now, she wore a clothing size of a 0, so you understand that she was very small. And this gal had a 4-hour labor and pushed for 30 minutes, and she had a 9.5-pound baby, okay? So this is not, as I said, it's not an isolated case. This happens all the time when we give the opportunity for the body to show the birth giver what she can do, what they can do. Because when the body has the hormones, and we talked about the peach, if you're going to induce a woman at 37 or 38 weeks because she's got a 0 size hip and waist and she's got a baby that's big, the peach is not ripe. It cannot work as efficiently. her tissues are not ready. They are not ripe enough to do that. So a birth giver has to have the ability to ripen up and allow things to progress as they need to progress. And if that baby is good size, then sometimes it needs a little more time, a little more patience, more baths, more showers, more rest, and a lot more movement to help that baby find its way through. Now, let's go to what I have said all along with simplicity, which is if you have a bigger baby, it doesn't matter as long as you have a lot of the simplicity in a lineup, which is your emotions and your heart are in complete trust and belief in yourself, that you get that pelvis flexible, right? The pelvis is flexible, it wants to spread, right? The little place between your pubic bone that's about this big, it starts getting sore for many women in the later part of pregnancy as the baby descends and it starts getting soft. It is said to be able to stretch 4 inches if needed. Okay, so we know that this joint, this ability for this beautiful butterfly wings that your hips are, have the ability to move and change position based on what your baby is doing, so long as you get those muscles flexible and flowing in there. When that occurs, the baby gets in a great position. The baby has floating cranial bones, which means they are meant to overlap and move in order to let a baby through. Your tissues are flooded with hormones in the very last parts of labor that actually cause it to want to open. And so that trust, it has to be there in everybody in the birth team. And if you're going traditional route, you need to either find a physician who's right on board with you, or you need to be straight up clear with them that you don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear their doubts, their fears, their apprehensions, because that belongs to them. And that belongs to any other women that they may have worked with that may or may not have done what you do to prepare for your birth. And your birth is an individual experience that needs to be treated as such and not be predetermined that you cannot get a big baby out who may not be big. And I can tell you that is something that I have heard over and over again as well, which is somebody gets sectioned for a big baby according to the ultrasound who turns out to be 6.5, 7.5 pounds and is not 9 pounds or 10 pounds as they suspected. There is variability, there is error in all things. So come back to what nature created. Now, doing that depends on also what you eat. And in our society now, we have a big organic rage. We've had that for at least 10 years. This is great. All of our stores have organic. Many of our foods, both processed and packaged, have organic. You want organic, but what I want to encourage you, especially if you have history of having babies that are on the robust side, or you have family history, or whatever it may be, that you return to earth. You return to nature, because nature created food very good for you. Clean proteins, whether it's animal or vegetable, make sure you're getting plenty of good protein. Clean, good fruits and vegetables, and lots of vegetables. Reasonable amount of fruit. No fruit juices, nothing that has to be altered in it, right? If you're going to eat a plum, eat a plum. If you're going to eat a peach, eat a peach. If you're going to eat an orange, eat an orange. Don't eat 10 oranges because you're drinking a glass of orange juice. It's a lot of sugar that's going down to that baby. So one of the things that we tell families, birth givers in our practice, that may have had babies, such as one that you heard, 11 pounds, 7 ounces, which, by the way, came out at home, and everybody did okay, is 28 to 32 weeks. Now, 28 to 32 weeks is a time when the placenta, where the baby's attached in there, starts growing, and it secretes a hormone called human placental lactogen, HPL. When that hormone secretes, it wants to be able to keep the sugar running in the birth giver, the woman's body, so that it feeds the baby, because the baby's going through a growth and the placenta is going through a growth. So there's a time in that 28 to 32 week time where we have seen time and time again, most, I would say 90% of the women, the birth givers, will gain more than the pound per week. They will usually gain in 1 month 6 to 10 pounds. And it is a time when the baby is setting seeds for what their weight could be later. So if we have someone that maybe has had those babies that are 11 and 12 pounds, we say, let's not have a 13 pounder. I'm not sure how fun that would be, right? Because it takes a lot more to take care of these babies afterwards as well. So we say to them, 28 to 32 weeks, I want you to be really mindful at keeping the cereals, the pastas, the rices, the sugars, all of those calories to a minimum, and up those veggies and proteins and some fruits. And save 1 night a week. Have whatever you want. Enjoy. Have the sweets, have whatever, and be able to help this baby from then on to be able to have a normalizing sugar. So what did we do? We took and we focused on diet instead of a lab test as our only measure, and no symptoms, and only saying, oh, well, I don't think you can get this baby out. It's just not true. That's what I want you to know. Only because I see normal. I see normal and natural, and that's what I get to see. So if the women, the birth givers who are choosing to birth at home with midwifery care, which means they're not choosing to have all of the interventions, then these are the ones that are being able to give birth to their babies because they know that we trust them. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to listen to a baby and make sure that that baby is handling labor, and so is the birth giver. Of course I am. Remember the ultimate goal. Every midwife is a healthy baby and a healthy mother, but we have a different philosophy than the traditional obstetrical model and a different way to handle it, because if someone clinically has had larger babies, then we also have various herbs and things like that that we encourage them to use to help keep that body running well, that pancreas happy, so that the insulin wants to function good, the liver wants to function good, where all the glycogen gets stored, and that a baby gets what it appropriately needs, right? All right, so we go back to, if somebody in a traditional system has a baby that is 8 pounds, 13 ounces or larger, and they're born and weighed, I want you to remember that weight, if they've had no medications, no IVs, no epidurals, is a reasonably accurate weight. If they've had epidurals and IVs, that weight is slightly skewed because most babies come in with more fluid than they would normally. And a truly gestational baby is quite fluided up. They have a very specific look to them, and they have a lot of extra fluid, and their bodies have been working too hard in there, and they have to be monitored and watched. So that 8 pounds, 13 ounces, if a baby comes up to that in a traditional obstetrical system, they're going to have blood sugar checks. Usually before they will let them nurse, because they want to know what the lowest is. Then they'll let them nurse. I think you appeal in this. Thank you, Ryan. They have blood sugar checks every 15 minutes for an hour, usually every half hour for another hour or two, and then once an hour for 4 hours. Every facility is different. I can't tell you each one of them. And the solution is feed the baby, right? Nurse the baby, get the colostrum in the baby. If a baby truly is gestationally diabetic, that baby may need more monitoring. I'm totally in agreement to that. But what I am saying is far too many babies and birth givers are going through unnecessary interventions, unnecessary fear tactics, and unnecessary cesarean sections and other interventions when they're babies and they are perfectly normal. Now, the other part of that is watching over that nutrition and making sure there's good education in it, right? Because you have to take the ownership. The physician cannot create the size of the baby and cannot birth the baby unless you have a cesarean. Even in a vacuum, a woman still has to do some of that job, okay? All right, so nutrition's a key, diet's a key, your family genetics. Understand that that may be how your family has babies. They all have 9 and 10 pound babies. Now, in our practice, when I look over the course of a year, I look at what are our biggest babies and how many have we had that were over this 8 pounds, 13 ounces, and what's our smallest baby, and how did we, how many do we have in between there? And I would say that at least 50%, and I think that's kind of conservative, but I'm going to say at least 50% of the babies over the past 21 years for us have been at 8 pounds, 8 ounces to just shy of 10 pounds. So 9 pounds, 10, 9 pounds, 13, okay? And we've had tons of babies that were 10 pounds. So many, okay? We've only had a few that hit the 11 pound range and only 2 that were 12 pounds. And they come straight out. They were not first babies, I will tell you that. They were always second or third or fourth babies, okay? And with that, their genetics went into a lot of what was going on. And those babies were not gestational babies. They were just big babies. That's who they were. They did not have any of the classic signs. Now, a truly gestational baby, after they are born, if they are having blood sugar problems, it is jittery, where the baby's jittery, meaning there's not enough sugar. If they can't maintain their temperature, if they have color changes, like they're a little bit dusky, if they have some respiratory issues, these are all symptoms of a baby who's having blood sugar issues. So if you get a baby after birth very quickly to breast, get them that colostrum and leave them there and don't stress them, the majority of the time these babies are going to take care of their own sugar loads. Now, they do have to be watched, and that's where another part of that ownership comes in, is taking responsibility as the parent to wake those babies up, make sure they get fed. They're used to a lot of sugar and they need that fuel. But babies 8 pounds 13, 9 pounds 2, 9 pounds 9, these babies are just normal, okay? They're normal when they haven't had any of this other intervention things that could be contributing to them having trouble with their blood sugar. A long pushing stage, long labors, lots of Pitocin, where the baby's sugar loads are being taxed. Too much stress on them. These are babies that need to be watched and cared for at home or in a traditional system of obstetrics. It doesn't matter which. You need the good care providers. So bring it back home is make sure that you're having as much foods the way Earth made them. Make sure that they're good quality. Watch those carbohydrate type things, cereals, pastas, wheat breads or white breads, wheat breads. Sprouted breads are much better. And keep those to a smaller amount. Get those protein levels up, and whatever way that you do that. Beans are great. Nuts are good. Don't overdo it, okay? But they're good. Beans, nuts, some of you have to be careful as vegetarians that you use your proteins, that it's not all soy. That's very hard on your liver. It's very hard to have a lot of that estrogen in your body, and we find that sometimes that can stress the body too. So you have to moderate things and be if you're going to be a vegetarian or a vegan, make sure you understand how to eat as a pregnant woman. So you want to make sure that that nutrition goes well, and you want to make sure that your belief system is set in what you believe about your body, because you're the only one that can. You're the only one that can take the ownership and the empowerment. When you believe in your body and you trust your body and you take good care of it and you keep that pelvis flexible and you do the things that help you to create the environment. And of course, I'm a home birth midwife, so I love having families at home because I understand that the environment fosters a positive outcome. But that may or may not be for everyone. Therefore, you need a doula or you need a midwife to also labor sit with you, be there at the hospital, follow you up afterwards, and keep you in that beautiful bubble in order to keep that mindset working from what comes from within. And be upfront with your care providers if you're in a traditional obstetrical system that you do trust your body, you are doing the things, you don't want to be judged by the other people that they have taken care of, and you ask them, please let me know if there is something that is out of balance, and I will look at a way to balance it back again. But I don't want your mistrust or your fear. I want your skills. And that is not about fear. Birth is about trust. It has to be. It's about good watchfulness, but it's about trust. When you're working at getting that trust within yourself, and maybe you've had some things coming into your space, if you're really insistent, I trust myself, I'm going to do this, I know I can, you have to ask yourself, is there fear behind that? What if I don't? What if it doesn't work? What if they're right? Okay. Find a way to put the fear in a basket on a shelf for birth and tell it, thank you, I hear you, I will get back to you when the birth is over. But for now, I'm going to have a quiet mind because that's where oxytocin lives. Adrenaline lives with the mind chatter because it's trying to decide how to protect you from harm. And birth is not about harm. The harm comes from outside. Birth comes from within you. And that is something you can trust. Have a good care provider that trusts also the process, who will monitor you well, keep you healthy by giving you the tools that can give you the strength and the power and the ownership to do what you need to do so that things are kept normal. When you do this, you maximize the opportunity to have the best possible outcome. And if you have pre-existing factors, that you've had gestational diabetes with a prior baby, do not assume you are high risk and say, oh, I could never have a baby at home or a midwife, I'm high risk. You have been told that. It is not true. Find out whether that is really your case and if being at a facility with obstetrical care is really in your best interest. A midwife is going to tell you that. Okay? Cassie says, I knew a family where the mom had 4 huge babies, all 11 to 13-ish pounds, and she's about 5'7" and skinny. Yep. It's all a matter of allowing nature to do what it knows how to do. And that's why I say the disclaimer is have the care providers, but make sure that they are doing that from a place of trust and watching, but not stimulating fear in you. Because one of the things we know, if there's fear, man, you're going to tighten back up because you want to protect the baby. It's not going to work that way, right? All right. So in coming down to a closing, please fire off any questions that you have. I know they're there. I know you've talked to people. So many cesarean sections get done for either a breech or for a big baby who may or may not be over that 8 pounds, 13 ounces. Cesareans get done for a baby being posterior, which many times, if you can get a lot of that good hip action, some of that chiropractic on the ball, moving the hips during the pregnancy and making sure that you keep that flexibility, babies can rotate before you get to birth, or at least sometimes during pushing they can rotate. But posterior babies or a bad head position, and a bad head position, that asynclitic, is often because the pelvis is torqued. Sometimes there are other issues that are causing that. I had someone who said, I just wish they'd just break my water and let's get on with it. And I said, well, that's an option, but maybe the baby needs its water and needs to be able to come down more slowly, because what's going on inside there, the wisdom is the water is protecting them. All right, I've got a few comments here. Joe says, if your first baby, I gotta be able to read it. If your first baby was a big baby, it is likely that your second will be large as well. The answer to that is that we see as maybe a norm curve, that many birth givers start out with one size, and each baby, as the uterus has the ability to expand, can get a little bit bigger with each baby. It does seem to have some correlation. If there's like a 9-pound baby and then a 10-pound baby, that it can get to an 11-pound baby. Not always that it's going to get to a 12, but that's where, okay, there's a trend. Let's really work on that nutrition using some herbs and see if we can help keep the baby within the 9 to 10 pounds, because we already know that one's going to work and do well. Sometimes some women will have a small baby, it'll be 6.5 pounds, and her next baby will be 10, and then her next baby will be 7.5. So it isn't across the board. And some of it gets set in by the baby, and some of it is lifestyle and diet. So that's where the ownership has to be taken into account. You get out and you walk every day, you swim, or you go to yoga classes, or you get on a bike while you're, small enough still. And just keep some activity and using up some of that goes on, as well as watching for the diet. There's so much available to you about the diet. Okay, another comment. What about, sorry, I didn't bring my glasses in tonight. What about C-sections due to cord around the neck? Can you still have a vaginal delivery? One of the most common questions that are asked of us when families come for consults is, what if there is a cord around the baby's neck? In your mind, that can feel really overwhelming, because when we think of it outside of the womb, that's not something that's very favorable, right? Inside the womb, I would say 1 in 3 babies has a cord. Rather it's just around the shoulders, rather it's all the way around, rather it's around here and under an arm. And there's a few babies that sort of get it all in an acrobatic type thing. But if you have a nuchal cord, yes, tons of babies have come out at home. Over and over and over again. I'm so used to having a nuchal cord somewhere, okay, that there's one there. The baby comes out, and many of our babies are born, our families birth in the water. The baby comes out. I go, okay, hang on, we got to unwrap the baby before you can bring the baby up. And when that occurs, one of the things is not letting waters go at like 4 centimeters, because the traditional obstetrical model is, well, you're 4 centimeters, let's break your water and let's just get things moving along. Maybe the baby, because of a cord, needs the water as the cushion to bring it down till the very end, where now the uterus is smaller, which means the cord is longer, which means the baby has the ability to get out and not have trouble. And that's where sometimes, if waters are released early, or maybe they release on their own, and baby has that, and labor is pushed, maybe with Pitocin or something, the baby doesn't have the ability to come down as slowly as it needs to, because sometimes we'll have a birth giver and we think, wow, this is a longer pushing stage than we sort of expected with a 3rd or 4th baby, and we think, maybe there's a cord. And maybe this baby just needs time to bring the uterus down with it so that it can safely come out. And those heart tones sound good. And then when they come out, sure enough, they've got 2 loops. And we're like, you know what? Nature and the woman's body knew exactly what to do to keep the baby safe and to be able to let the baby pass through the canal with a safe ability to unwrap them. So no, if you have a nuchal cord, you do not need a cesarean section, only if, as baby is coming down, the cord is compressed. Now, I want you to understand that if there's a cord around the neck and the baby's coming down like this, once you start to, thanks for all the goodies, once you start to push, and you push and the head kind of molds, as it comes under the pubic bone, at this point, sometimes the chin compresses on the cord enough that if you're listening to baby, you can hear some of the baby telling you, wow, there's a little decrease in blood flow here, you guys. And the baby then comes back and it lets its head come up and the baby rests and recovers. This is really normal, okay? So then when the baby goes down, let's say it has 1 or 2 contractions because it's going to come through those bones, it gets a little compressed. Once it comes through the bones, it lifts its head. No more compression. And right now it's like here on the perineum. So then the baby gets pushed through and everything does fine. So when you understand that and you don't intervene with Pitocin and epidurals and breaking water and pushing a baby like that, then you have a baby that can handle having a nuchal cord. If you just, if you're watchful, you want to be watchful, of course, meaning that you're listening to the baby and the baby's telling you, how long can I do this or that? And the babies do fine. So no, I don't like it for that. Is it likely that your second will be larger as well? Oh, you already asked me that one. Okay. Let's see. Love. Okay. What else have we got? Oh, so good to know. My friend was rushed to an emergency cesarean due to cord wrapped around the baby. I hear that a lot. Just felt suspicious to me. I don't know all the details of the delivery, but was just curious. Yeah, and we don't. Sometimes it's viable, but I can't even tell you in the 900 babies we've done in the last 21 years, and at least another 100 or 200 before that. I'm like, how many have gone, first of all, transferred from home to hospital, let alone gone in for a cesarean? I'm like, I don't know, 2, maybe 3. And that was only because labor was stalling out and we went into the hospital. Labor continued and eventually they ended up having to go in for a cesarean, and they said, oh, it was because it was a nuchal cord. And I think the nuchal cord was there. I don't know if that's really the cause. So it's overrated. That's what I want you to know. And it's really about keeping birth simple. If you complicate birth with all the extra complications, you put a complicated need within the birth giver and the baby to handle what you're using as interventions on a natural course of what is supposed to progress. Okay? More questions? Anybody got another one for me or thoughts? Please tell people about these videos, all right? I'm doing them because I am so crazily passionate that we keep educating more and more birth givers away from fear and back into trust, regardless of place of birth. Now, I say that, and regardless of care providers, knowing full well that where the traditional system is with obstetrics, it is a completely different philosophy. However, birth givers, women, can have babies in those facilities and can have them as care providers, provided that they have as much education and that they are able to advocate for themselves and their baby, which can be difficult in that system because they can often use the thing, well, do you want your baby to die? If you have too much, sugar or whatever, or you're not wanting to have a cesarean because the baby's breech, or you want other things. That is a sad, sad thing to have to bully a woman with. You want somebody to sit down compassionately, explain things to you, give you your choices, give you your options, look for ways to help solve this issue, and not put just fear in the pot. All right, I've got another comment. Thank you so much for all your knowledge 8 weeks pregnant and so thankful to have your information and videos and look forward to all the ones to come. Well, thank you so much. I do appreciate those kind words. You are amazing, and I want you to remember that. Your body will work great. Feed it well, move it well, and make good choices regardless of where you're going to go. But remember who's in charge. It's you, and it's your ownership. It's not anybody else's. It doesn't belong to anybody else. And I will stand on that in everything that I do. So my series is coming along well. It's just, I'm having so much fun. We're adding all of the pictures and videos and things like that to the dialogue. And I'm hoping that it will be out by the end of summer. You know, it's a bigger project than I knew at all, but I'm just so pleased with it, and I'm looking forward to the partners seeing their section of it. It's a nice full interview and with 5 partners, and they really tell you about all that they're doing, and I go through all the nutrition, all the supplements, all of the how to do the stretches, and all about birth, and you know, all of that. So I'm looking forward to finally being able to share it with you. So it's still coming. Thank you to those of you that joined me now. I hope you'll go back and you'll watch this one to talk about big babies and what constitutes them, and really being able to understand when they really are and when they really are just lovely, robust babies having a good time. Oh, you're so welcome. On the Instagram, sometimes I don't know exactly who you are, but thank you for sharing your knowledge and information. You're so, so, so welcome. Please share it as much as you can. Keep educating these women. So until next week, next Wednesday, 7 o'clock, I'll be back. Remember, go in, hug your children. If you don't have any children yet and you're pregnant now, hug your belly. Tell your baby or tell your children how amazing they are, and that you love them, and that they can do anything that they set their mind to. All right, have an amazing week. Enjoy, and I'll see you next time. Take care.